Hi, third graders. Today we're going to be starting Unit 1, Lesson 1, The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Lesson 1, The Riverbank, Part 1. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to answer yes to these two questions. Can you determine the main idea and supporting details of a text? And can you compare and contrast two characters? We're going to have some words to listen for as we read this story today. We're not going to talk about what they mean, but we are going to spend some time thinking about what these words say. Let's look at this first word. If I look at that word, I see two shorter words that looks like they've been put together, like a compound word. The letters B-A-C-K spell back, and the letters W-A-T-E-R spell water. This word is backwater. Can you figure this word out? This word says bolted. Let's look at the next one. This is a long one. This word says contemplated. Here's the next word. This word says hesitating. Do you know what this word says? This word says interferes. And here's our last word. In the middle of that word, I see A-N-D. That says and. Then at the beginning, I see M-E. That says me. If I put this together, me and meandered. Remember, as we listen to our story today, we're going to be listening for these words and trying to figure out what they mean in our story. The story The Wind in the Willows is a book by Kenneth Grahame, but it's been adapted for third graders. If you have an adaptation, it means it's changed to fit a certain purpose. The original book is 272 pages, but ours won't be quite that long since it's adapted for younger students like third graders. This book was published in 1908, more than 100 years ago. You're going to hear a lot about the word willow. When we hear the word willow, it refers to this, a weeping willow tree. These willows like a lot of water. So can you think where they might grow near? Did you say a river or a lake or a pond? Weeping willows like to live near sources of water. This is our author, Kenneth Grahame. He was born in a place called Scotland. As he grew up, he later moved to England, where we see the second star. Our story takes place by the Thames River, and you can see in our map picture, it's that skinny blue line that runs right through the star that's by London. People who live in England are often called British. As we read this story, we might hear some British terms or British words that we're not too familiar with. Think about these four words: pop, soda, Coke, soft drink. All these words mean the same thing, but there's probably a word that you say more often than others. For example, when I talk about it, I call it pop, but my husband calls it soda. We both mean the same thing. We're just using a different name for it. As we listen to our story, we're going to hear some British phrases. When we hear them, I'll point them out to you. Something else we're going to look for in our story today is called personification. That means an animal or a thing in a story that's behaving like a person. If you look at that word personification, you can see at the beginning we have this word P-E-R-S-O-N, person. That gives us a hint that the word personification means something that acts like a person. As you listen today, we're going to see if our characters act like animals or act like people, or maybe both. Here's our first character, and I hope you enjoy our first chapter of The Wind in the Willows. The mole had been working very hard all the morning spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash. He did this until he had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur. Spring was moving in the air above, and the earth below, and around him and his dark and lowly little house. Any wonder he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor and said, "Bother!" and "Oh, blow!" and also, "Hang spring cleaning!" and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. We heard our first word, bolted. I wonder what it means that Mole bolted out of the house. Listen to that sentence again. He bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. If someone bolts, it means they run or move very fast. Mole immediately made for the steep little tunnel, and without a moment's hesitation, he began scraping, scratching, and scrabbling. He worked busily with his little paws and muttered to himself, up we go, till at last, pop! His snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. You might have heard these phrases, bother, oh, blow, and hang spring cleaning. These are British phrases. In English, we might say things like, darn it, shoot, I hate this. These are all phrases that means Mole did not like what he was doing. This is fine, he said to himself. This is better than whitewashing, he added as he jumped with delight at the joy of spring. In this state of happiness, he made his way across the meadow till he reached the hedge on the farther side. It all seemed too good to be true. As moving hither and thither, he observed everywhere birds building and leaves and flowers bursting forth. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, he came to the edge of a full-fed river. There he stood quite mesmerized, as never before had he seen a river. He watched in awe as it shimmered and shined, gurgled and burbled, swirled and curled its way seaward. So bewitched and fascinated was he that he trotted for a while by the side of it. Eventually, exhausted by this tremendous effort, he sat down on the bank to rest. Our word meandered tells us what Mole was doing by the river. Think about what Mole was doing by the river. Did you say Mole was wandering by the river? Or walking by the river? Looking at it, staring at it? If you meander, it means you walk without a purpose. As he sat on the grass and gazed across the river, A dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. Mole quietly contemplated what a nice snug dwelling place it would make. When Mole contemplated, it means he thought about it. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle like a tiny star down in the heart of it. It could hardly be a star, and it was too glittering and small for a glowworm. Then as he looked, it winked at him, and so revealed itself to be an eye, and a small face began gradually to grow up round it, like a frame round a picture. A brown little face with whiskers, a grave round face with the same twinkle in its eye, small neat ears and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. The two animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the Mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat. "Well, it's very nice to ask," said the Mole, rather grumpily, he being new to a river and riverside life and its ways. The rat said nothing, but stooped and unfastened a rope and hauled on it, then lightly stepped into a little boat which the Mole had not observed. It was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for two animals, and the Mole loved it immediately. The rat sculled across. Then he held up his forepaw as the Mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And the Mole, to his great delight, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. This section said that Rat sculled across the river. What do you think sculled means? If someone sculls across the river, it means they move across it with oars. "This has been a wonderful day," said he, as the rat shoved off and took back to the sculls again. "Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in a... You never... Well, What have you been doing then?" "Is it so nice as all that?" asked the Mole shyly, though he was quite prepared to believe it, as he leant back in a seat and surveyed the cushions, the oars, and all the fascinating fittings. "Nice! It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly, as he leant forward for a stroke. "Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing," he went on dreamily. "Messing about in boats. Messing..." "Look ahead, Rat!" cried the Mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt. The oarsman lay on his back at the bottom of the boat, his heels in the air. "About in boats, or with boats," the rat went on cheerily, picking himself up with a pleasant laugh. "In or out of 'em, doesn't matter. Look here, if you've really nothing else to do, what do you say we spend some time on the river together?" We heard that Rat was the oarsman. What do you think an oarsman is? An oarsman is the person who rows the boat. The Mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of contentment, and leaned back blissfully onto the soft cushions. "What a day I'm having," he said. "Let us start at once." "Hold on a minute, then," said the rat, as he tied fast the boat and climbed up into his hole above. Moments later he reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. "Shove that under your feet," he said to Mole, as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the boat and took the sculls again. "What's inside it?" asked the Mole eagerly. "There's cold chicken inside it," replied the rat. "Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled gherkins, salad, French crescent rolls, sandwiches, potted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water, Oh, stop! Stop! Cried the mole. That is too much. You really think so? Inquired the rat seriously. It's only what I always take on these little excursions. The other animals complain that I hardly have enough. The mole did not hear a word he said. He was already absorbed in the new life he was entering upon. He trailed a paw in the water and dreamed long waking dreams. The water rat, like the good little fellow he was, sculled steadily on and did not disturb him. I like your clothes, old chap, the rat remarked after some half hour or so had passed. I'm going to get a velvet jacket myself some day. Rat just used the words old chap. Old chap is just another way to say man or boy. I beg your pardon, said the mole, pulling himself together with an effort. You must think me very rude, but this is all new to me. So this is a river. The river, corrected the rat. And you really live by the river? What a jolly life. By it and with it and on it and in it, said the rat. It's brother and sister to me, and aunts and company and food and drink and, naturally, washing. It's my world, and I don't want any other. But isn't it a bit dull at times, the mole asked? Just you and the river, and no one else to pass a word with? No one else to. Well, I mustn't be too hard on you, said the rat. You're new to it. The bank is so crowded nowadays that many people are moving away altogether. Oh, no, it isn't what it used to be at all. Otters, kingfishers, dabchicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long, and always wanting you to do something, as if a fellow had no business of his own to attend to. In this picture, we see the three birds that Rat talked about, the kingfisher, the dabchick, and the moorhen. What lies over there? Asked the mole, waving a paw towards a background of woodland that darkly framed the water meadows on one side of the river. Well, replied the rat hesitantly, that's the wildwood. We don't go there too often. Are there scary creatures there? Mole asked, trying not to tremble. The squirrels are all right, Rat replied, and the rabbits, some of them. The rabbits are a mixed lot. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Wouldn't live anywhere else either. Dear old Badger. Nobody interferes with him. We just heard the word interferes. What do you think it means to interfere with something? If you interfere, it means to get in the way or prevent something from working smoothly. So when Rat says nobody interferes with Badger, that means nobody bothers or gets in the way of Badger. Why, who should interfere with him? Asked the mole. Well, of course, there are others, explained the rat in a hesitating sort of way. We just heard our last word, hesitating. Think about how Rat said that. Well, of course, there are others, explained the rat in a hesitating sort of way. Did you hear how Rat was a little bit unsure about saying that there were others? If you hesitate, it means you give some space because maybe you don't really want to say what the answer is. Weasels, stoats, foxes, and so on. They're all right in a way. I'm very good friends with them. Past the time of day when we meet, but you can't trust them, and that's a fact. And beyond the wild wood? Mole asked. Beyond the wild wood is the wide world, said the rat. And that's something that doesn't matter either to you or me. I've never been there, and I'm never going, nor you either, if you've got any sense. Don't ever refer to it again. Please. Now then, here's our backwater at last, where we're going to lunch. Let's think about some questions about our story today. Who are the main characters in today's read aloud? Take some time to think about this question. We know the main characters in a story are the people or animals that we hear about most, that the story is mostly about. In our story today, the main characters were Rat and Mole. What do we call the events of a story in which the characters are involved? The events of a story are called the plot. What things do you know about Mole based on what you heard in the read aloud today? Take some time to think about what you learned about Mole. Some things I learned about Mole is that he doesn't really care for spring cleaning. He lives underground. He has black fur. He's fascinated by the river. He's shy, but he's happy. I bet you also came up with some things that you learned about Mole. Would you describe Mole as curious? Why or why not? When you think about this question, think about things that happened in our story that might tell whether Mole is curious. What season is the story set in when Mole leaves his home? How do you know? Did you say spring? We know that because it tells us that Mole is doing spring cleaning. Also, if you think about all of our pictures and we look at the setting where the story is taking place, we can see the green grass and the green leaves. What are some other things in that picture that might show you that it's springtime? Did you see the flowers and the butterfly and the bird with its nest? All of those things show us that the setting is probably springtime. What adjectives would you use to describe Rat? The word adjective is a word that just means describing words. So what describing words would you use to tell about Rat? Some ways that I might describe Rat is that he's friendly, he's adventurous, but he's cautious. He's kind of careful. He's wise. He's aquatic. That means he likes to be around the water. He's generous. He likes to share. I'm sure you came up with some good adjectives to describe Rat too. Why do you think Rat does not want to go into or even speak about the wide world or the area beyond the wild wood? For our last question, you're going to record your answers. What examples of personification did you hear in today's read aloud? You might make a chart that looks like this. And on the left side where it says personification, you can tell some ways that rat and mole acted like people. And then on the right, some ways rat and mole acted like animals. You might also do a flip grid. Your teacher will let you know for sure which way they want you to record your answer. Last is this assignment. Either on your iPad or some paper, you're going to have these two circles. You're going to draw two circles that overlap. This is how we're going to compare and contrast our two characters in this story today. On the left side, you're going to write the word mole. And then on the right side, you're going to write the word rat. In the middle, you're going to put both. On the left side, we're going to tell things that we know that just are about mole. On the right side, we're going to put things we know that are just about rat. And then in the center, we're going to put things we know about both characters. For example, we might say mole lives underground, but does rat live underground? No, rat lives by the river. What's something we know about both of our characters? Maybe we could say they both live outdoors. Oh, you're going to spend some time thinking about your characters and some ways that mole and rat are different and also ways that they're the same. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter of The Wind in the Willows, Lesson 1, The Riverbank, Part 1.